So you've heard about the $250 AnarKings tournament. You know exactly where to find it inside of LittleWarGame. You know that the tournament itself is April 26th, 2025, and happens every 2 weeks thereafter for the next several months. And you think that this is interesting even as you've looked at the basic gameplay loop. But you might remember that there were heroes and there were units, and what exactly are those heroes and units? And that's what this video is going to cover, specifically the heroes of AnarKings. You get to choose from one of these 6 heroes that'll be presented in this video as the first most important choice that you and your team get to create, and your plan to destroy the enemy nexus. Your hero is going to inform a lot of the tactical outplay potential and strategic decisions that are going to enable you and your team to win the game. So without further ado, let's go into the first hero, the Soldier. The Soldier has a lot of hit points and a lot of armor. And armor in this game, in AnarKings, works subtractively, similar to something such as StarCraft. So when I say that this thing has 450 health and 9 armor, you might well understand that even if a unit does 13 damage, it will only take 4 of it at a time. And with this many hit points, this makes the Soldier one of the tankiest heroes in the entirety of the game space. The Soldier has 2 activatable abilities, 2 passive abilities, and then we're going to go into its ultimate. So the first thing we're going to note is its passive abilities. The first passive ability is Soldier's Guard. It passively increases the allied armor by 3 of itself and all allied units in range 4.5. Range 4.5, for those uninitiated in the editor or in AnarKings, is roughly this size, and that means that this is taking the Soldier's base 6 armor and elevating it up to 9. Merely putting the Soldier inside of a wave as it is spawning or fighting another wave will be a huge advantage, as even your allied wave minions are no longer going to have their base armor, but will have an additional 3. And this is important considering that the base level of armor in LittleWarGame tends to be about 5, for buildings, for structures, maybe even for basic minions and army units that you can purchase. So adding 3 can be as much as a 60% increase in the durability of some of these more fragile units and fragile items. The second passive effect that the Soldier have is an accelerated rate of speed. Now, the Soldier has 2.75 movement speed by default, but every time he hits something, he gets a little bit faster. This ability stacks up to 5 times, and each stack lasts 5 seconds. Notice there was a brief instance there where the Soldier is moving at an accelerated rate of even 4 movement speed, despite being level 1. You can stack the attacks on top of yourself, on top of enemy units, or allied units, to get the effect of speeding up and chasing someone down. This passive ability causes the Soldier to really stick to enemies that it hits, and makes it capable of running down heroes once it has gained a sufficient speed advantage over them. Now, I've talked about both of the passive abilities, Soldier's Guard and the unstated bonus movement speed on attack, but what about the 2 active abilities, Shatter and Slash? Well, let's go over those in the order that they're presented, or reverse order. Slash just deals AoE damage. Let's go ahead and apply Slash over here. It does 45 in an AoE, and look, we just damaged a bunch of units. Now, all it does is damage, and you can see that it comes back on a fairly short cooldown. Let's take a look at the W effect. W, Shatter, does more damage. This effect is 60 damage instead of 45, and that makes up for the AoE with not only the improved damage, but also the destruction of armor on things that it hits. Notice that this thing has its effect of its armor being shattered, therefore, instead of the default of 6 armor, it had 1 for the duration. Not for its entire life, but for a decent time. The combination of the Soldier's movement speed, the passive durability that it provides by Soldier's Guard of bonus armor, the fact that it gets faster on attacking, and its ability to go ahead and attack a single target specifically quite well, means that the Soldier is very equipped to duel, and is more than capable of running down and sticking to slow targets such as enemy clerics, or maybe enemy workers. It's not the most efficient at clearing waves, but one of the things that it does best, and is a bit unsung, is that its sheer tankiness makes it quite forgiving for new players, and all of these things also mean that it has a good amount of outplay potential. It's also good into the late game due to the passives that it has and its durability. One frustration you might encounter, however, if you play the soldier, is that the soldier doesn't have as much raw outplay potential as other characters. You are in effect trading its durability and its safety in exchange for the ability to beat an opponent that you are much more skilled than, or that you are ever so slightly more knowledgeable of in a matchup. And for that reason, the soldier isn't exactly a top tier selection. Now, the final thing we're going to do here is we're going to get the soldier's last ability, which is going to be his ultimate. Never forget that you have to go to a bar or a crypt to go ahead and buy the ultimate ability of whatever character you're using. The ultimate ability for the soldier hero is Unyielding. Unyielding does a couple of interesting things. First off, as with all ultimates in LittleWarGame's AnarKings mod, purchasing an ultimate makes it so that you gain a hero-specific buff, like bevy of stats. In this case, we're going to note that you actually receive additional armor when you buy this, and you have additional health scaled up once you have bought the ultimate. But what does the ultimate do? Well, here's my basic auto attack, but with the ult activated, the soldier gains a flurry of bonus hit points, and he hits much harder. Notice we went from 34 damage now to 59 damage, and have increased armor and HP regeneration. This means that the soldier is even more forgiving, as the soldier doesn't necessarily have to run all the way back to the fountain to heal up. Notice in this instance that the soldier is at full health, despite the fact that we were damaged previously, simply from one activation of the ultimate. The combination of forgiveness, speed, and damage means that the soldier is a good initial pick, and its durability means you will not be punished immediately for it. But the outplay potential isn't as high as with other characters. But I nevertheless hope that you will enjoy the soldier and consider selecting them when you play AnarKings. After previewing the hardy soldier, we now have a hero that is almost its antithesis, the Sharpshooter hero. The Sharpshooter hero has 2 active abilities and 1 passive ability on top of its ultimate, but the biggest thing to note about the Sharpshooter is that it's much lacking in hit points and in armor. No longer the 9 armor of the soldier, the Sharpshooter now has 6, and not the 450 starting health, but the 300. But making up for all of that is the fact that the Sharpshooter attacks much more quickly than the soldier, attacking roughly once per second, or every 1.05 seconds. Every level, it gets slightly increased damage and slightly increased attack speed. And the combination of these two things mean that if you're a hands-based player who really wants to take advantage of the difference in ranges between this and this, you absolutely will be able to with the Sharpshooter. So the Sharpshooter, we're going to go over its passive ability first. Sharpshooter's Virtue. Sharpshooter's Virtue is similar to the Soldier's Guard in that it upgrades the stats of the Sharpshooter itself and surrounding units, but what it upgrades is very different, and the effect, while a small number, is very powerful. Sharpshooter's Virtue increases the range of the Sharpshooter and any unit that has a ranged attack, not melee, but a ranged attack, by 0.5. The functional increase of this is hard to note, but what is definitely noticeable is it in action. I also want to note that this means that the Sharpshooter has a base range of 5. The combination of its base movement speed, its attack damage, and the fact that it increases the range means that it can help you push waves by giving more surface area and more DPS density to your ranged minions. In this case, the bowmen, or if I were on the other side, the slithers. Note that just by being here and only weaving in a couple of auto attacks, the fact that my ranged units, the bowmen, don't have to get in range of the slithers, but the slithers have to enter into range to them, is a naturally pushing force. After that, we're going to note that the Sharpshooter has 2 active abilities. The first one is Mark of Pride. Mark of Pride can be certainly used as such and fired doing damage after it targets into a line and hitting an area for damage. It can do that, but another big reason to use Mark of Pride is that Mark of Pride has tremendous range, and we're going to zoom out to give you a better indication. This is a Mark of Pride shot. As soon as you fire it, this reveal caltrop appears, and the arrow travels. If it hits an enemy on landing in the circle zone of the AoE as identified, then that enemy and all enemies in its area take damage. These caltrops also have lifetime. Notice how we might notice that our opponent has workers here, even though our sharpshooter is all the way over inside of a wave state. And that's one of the benefits of Mark of Pride. The second ability is Hit the Knees. Hit the Knees deals damage, and on top, but its long cooldown, it hides a very powerful effect. When Hit the Knees attacks an enemy unit, it slows it. The degree to which it slows it depends on its base speed. By default, the My Knees condition that Hit the Knees deals actually cripples and renders to 0 the movement speed of these kind of creeps, and it can lower the movement speed of units that are struck by it by 2. Notice that heroes inside of AnarKings have a base of 2.5, 2.75, or 3.0 movement speed, thus lowering the movement speed of something by 2, if not outright stopping a hero, can make it very vulnerable, even to follow-up attacks such as Mark of Pride. Now, all of that is highly interesting, so let's get to the final area. Again, remember, you have to buy your ultimate inside of AnarKings, and this ultimate is called Bear Traps. Bear Traps will feel like Mark of Pride, but have a markedly different impact. With Bear Traps, you can set them down into a location on a very short cooldown. Simply press the ability and left-click the ground. It spawns a 180 or 3 minutes, 180 seconds or 3 minutes lifetime bear trap with 100 hit points and 5 armor. The bear trap deals 50 damage to the enemies that are nearby when they get within range, the range being about here. You may notice that my ultimate is already off cooldown, and this is because rather than a big shot of explosive damage, what bear traps are really good at is being set around the map. Notice that they also give a small amount of vision. Let's put one over here, for instance, where we normally don't have vision. And you can note that this bear trap is going to give us some understanding of what's happening in an area surrounding it. After only an 8 to 10 second cooldown, we can set another bear trap, but they're not just good for vision. The bear trap can also be set near or on top of enemies, and when it is done, it actually fires on those enemies with AoE. Notice the AoE damage that these two slithers took as a result of being in range. They are also suffer the same status condition as My Knees, or the Hit the Knees ability, which is to say that a unit that is struck by a bear trap also has reduced movement speed for a period of time after being damaged. So while they have low hit points, they are excellent. These bear traps are an excellent scouting tool and are more than capable of slowing down your opponents who may try to stick onto or directly walk up to and attack the sharpshooter. One of the things you'll note when playing the sharpshooter is that it has a lot of control and one of the hardest CC abilities in the game in Hit the Knees. The ability to add bonus range to units, especially wave units, or units that you purchase, is formidable and very powerful. But you may also note, if you are observant, that the sharpshooter doesn't have any kind of speed up, any kind of stim pack, or ability that helps it run away. And this is because the sharpshooter, while having tremendous DPS or damage per second, and good CC or crowd control abilities, can really struggle to get away. And if you have a surrounded sharpshooter, you might be counting the timer until it comes back from a death state. And that's going to be it for the sharpshooter as we go into the next hero. We've talked a lot about the soldier and the sharpshooter, a basic melee hero and a basic ranged one. Now it's no surprise we're going to be talking about the mage, or the basic spellcaster hero. The mage is first and foremost a wave-clearing monster. It's not very fast. It actually has the lowest speed of all heroes at 2.5, or shares that speed with other slower heroes. It has 5 armor, something of minimal, and it has very low health, comparable even to the sharpshooter. What it does to offset all of these deficits, and its frankly terrible attack speed of 1 attack every 2 seconds for only 22 damage, in sharp contrast to the sharpshooter's 20 damage every 1.05 seconds, is that the mage hero casts spells. This is to be expected. And the mage has a hidden passive effect, but also 3 active abilities, which we're going to cover now. And we actually don't need a wave really to express what they do. The first ability we're going to talk about is Flames. You might also want to think of it as Fireball. Fireball is an ability that does what you think a fireball should do. Tap the ability, left-click the ground, the mage will cast the effect. Notice, however, that the cooldown on Fireball is 0, which means you can have some truly ridiculous casts like this. To get a lot of fireballs, you can overlap them on top of one another, or fire them in a conal form, as I just did. This is just a fireball. It deals damage. It will get last hits and get you that bonus gold for any enemy unit that it kills. And it's a pretty good tactic and a good ability for chasing down retreating opponents. Due to the properties of Fireball, Fireball deals damage every tick that an enemy is inside of it. To make explicit why that matters, an enemy that is coming towards you will take reduced damage from Fireball, as they are approaching you and the Fireball is sailing past them quickly. If, however, an opponent is running away from you and you tail them with a Fireball, they will take the continuous damage of the Fireball over the duration of the Fireball's life. Again, note that we can spam this. Very useful ability. The next ability we're going to talk about is Flame Wall. This is, unlike Fireball, a bit more deceptive, but you'll find it is a bit more powerful, thus well justifying its increased cost relative to Fireball. The Flame Wall summons this creature, a Fireling. The Fireling is a timed life unit with 45 hit points, so it can be removed, but it's not trivial to do so. It does also auto-attack once every 1.25 seconds enemy nearby units for 30 damage apiece. This means that situationally, the Firewall or the Flame Wall is actually as good or sometimes better for its cost and its mana at clearing waves than the Fireball itself. Let's use a couple of these abilities and see how they work in conjunction. Notice that 2 Fireballs get these slithers in the back pretty weak, but this Fireling is getting some of the last hits for us that we have needed. Notice its range, however, is pretty short. It wasn't getting the slither, and it wasn't getting the spider that was over here. But that's not really the powerful aspect of this Flame Wall. The Fireling can also be used to body block. It is not a collision ignoring unit. This means that you can cast it as an opponent is trying to retreat and stop them from retreating. See, notice that I am trying to retreat past it, but I am not allowed to. I instead have to go around, and I'm hugging the Fireling pretty closely so you get an idea as to its range and size. Trapping your opponent with a Fireling while their hero is otherwise cornered by minions or a wave or other army units is an excellent way to set up your Fireball and rain down damage on top of the trapped hero. But let's say you're not in an advantaged state. What do you do next? Well, the next thing to talk about is relocate. It says that it teleports the mage, and as you would expect from a teleportation, it is extremely situational, useful, and mana expensive. Notice here that I just burnt 50 mana for the cost of a 10-second cooldown to teleport that short distance there. Let's do it again so you can see what the distance looks like in about another 2 seconds. I'm trying to cast maximum range, and on the attempt, I only go from here to here. This is the range of your teleport. Despite its small size, this is an incredibly versatile shunt or blink ability. It allows you to go up and down cliff faces, to ignore terrain, to get past enemy minions, to prevent yourself from being body blocked, and it can even allow you creative access to escape routes that other characters would never have access to. Something else, however, is that the mage seems to have a lot of mana, doesn't it? So its final ability is actually a passive ability, and it is called Arcane Aura. For those of you who are used to Warcraft 3, just think of it as Brilliance Aura, except kind of stacked on instead of it, right? Arcane Aura means that the mage is always giving mana to units that surround it. It's excellent to pair the mage with a hero that really struggles for mana. And this allows a synergistic effect to make your army units that also require mana, such as a pyroclast or a cleric, much more powerful as well. Now, there is one weakness that the mage has, and his ultimate serves to address it. One of the problems the mage may have is that they could potentially run out of mana. It doesn't look like it now, but if you're casting a lot of spells, teleporting, throwing some fireballs, chipping for damage, and keep in mind you're doing a lot of this because your basic attacks aren't very strong, you can end up in a situation where you are rapidly regaining mana, but your spells are just so expensive. And so that is why the ultimate, as unimpactful as it may seem, is actually Arcane Aura, which just gives the effect of the Brilliance Aura to the mage itself. Notice now that while we can still have mana problems, any mana that we need comes back much faster than previously. This means that even if we were to take the mage and walk, let's just take a mage with no mana and walk all the way back over here, and we're going to walk to the top of the hill. Keeping in mind that the flame ability is 25, the flame wall is 35, relocate is 60, we have gained back up to 90, almost 100 mana. We now have the ability to do a teleport and a flame wall if we wanted to, or to do 4 fireballs in the short amount of time it took to walk the distance there. With their ultimate, the mage is almost never suffering for mana and becomes a wave-clearing machine, very capable of changing wave states and racking up gold and experience. Now, what are the weaknesses of the mage? It seems like it can do everything. It can body block, it can AoE for waves, it can teleport. What can't this unit do? And the answer is that the mage actually doesn't deal well with units that can outspeed it. While yes, the teleport is powerful, this is not quite as much distance as you would think, and it doesn't afford as much safety as you would like. The mage can be run down by faster enemies, and the mage actually has to commit to teleporting in for anything that it wants to do offensively, which means that it can't then do that defensively. Because the mage tends to stack up wave clearing responsibilities, it tends to be more of an army supportive unit than an actual thing that takes over the game. And it's going to have a lot of problems because of its movement speed. If it ever falls behind in levels and enemy heroes start being faster than it due to the global 0.1 movement speed that all heroes get for every level. Nevertheless, if you like the challenge of balancing the early game mana and wielding the late game firepower, pun intended, you might like the mage. It offers a different experience, whereas the soldier is more for someone who is playing with, let's say, their heart, their courage, and the sharpshooter is someone who's playing more with their hands. You can fall into the stereotype that the mage is someone who's playing more with their head, and I think that you'll find that it is an excellent supportive army spellcaster.